This meeting is being recorded.
Share my screen with you. All right, you guys can hear me all right?
Yep.
Excellent. All right, guys, today, Leadership Equipment Workshop, November 7th, 2022. Can't believe it's already November. We are going to talk about being fed and feeding others. This, for me, it's an exciting topic. It's actually a pretty basic idea of what we try to do and what we're trying to do each and every day as leaders, and that, you know, you should always be looked to be fed and to feed others as well. Again, nothing overly complicated about this particular topic, but it's an important one at that. We're going to move right into the icebreaker, guys, and would love for some to unmute themselves and others just to add to the chat. That would be great as well. But if you could have any food, what would it be? It could be a type of food. So you could say, hey, I could do Italian all day, every day, Chinese, whatever it might be. Or it could be, you know, a certain dish of some sort, right? Hey, I love spaghetti, whatever it might be. But if you could have any food, what would it be?
Steak of all different kinds. It's delicious all the time.
We can do it. Me and you don't have anything to do today.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I agree with Neil. It'd be Mexican. We just had a Mexican restaurant open up down the street that I'm going to after work today. It's always Mexican. Tacos, quesadillas, all that fun stuff.
Ooh, okay. Sounds good. Nice. What else? What else? Jamaican cuisine from Mark. All right.
Bacon mac and cheese sounds really good.
Ooh.
So you're going for a particular dish. Wade comes in with ice cream. Ice cream. What do you want for dinner? Ice cream. Ice cream is very good. Pizza. Excellent, Michael. Yeah, so many different types of pizza. So many different types of pizza. Steak and potatoes. I like it. I like it.
I mean, this could be a whole different question, but how do you take your steak? Like, how do you want it cooked?
Well, that's a good question. It's a good question. I think that was directed towards you, Stephanie. Medium well. There you go. Mm-hmm.
Unacceptable.
What would you say? You need some red? A little bit more red?
Wade wants his blue. That's what I'm getting from that. But yeah.
Still mooing. Goodness gracious. That's fresh. That's fresh off the farm. Shannon, what would you eat? Any dish that you could have, what would it be? You're eating right now. What are you eating? What are you eating?
I'm eating Starbucks. I just got a panini.
All right. Well,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. All right. Let's make sure we're muted. If you're not currently talking, just please mute because we're getting that echo again. That'd be awesome. Very good. Very good. All right. So I think just about everybody shared. If you haven't yet, I would love for you to share there in the chat or unmute. But we're going to move on now. And we're going to talk through what we're ultimately going to go over here on this particular presentation. So no one person could possibly stay on top of everything. And the sooner leaders stop trying to be all things to all people, the better off their organizations will be. This right here, this quote, we do so much in our day that requires other people around us to get the job done, right? I mean, we delegate all day. We draw people into accountability. If our parks could function off 3 or 4 people, I'm sure all of us would say it would be that much easier, right? If our operations were smaller operations and you had less variables, and by variables, I mean different personalities that are going through different things at different times. That's the high variable, is the people piece of our organization, both on the guest end and on the team member end. And of course, if there was only a few of us in each park, things would probably run a little bit easier or a lot easier. But the reality is we have to get work done through others. And so that's something we seek to do each and every day. And it's one of the many reasons why we do these leadership development calls, so you can get better as a leader and grow. So last week I talked about vision, and I've actually I've talked about vision each and every week. This vision hasn't changed really, so you've seen this before. But last week in particular, I had articulated the fact that we need a mission, because vision, as I would define it, is really kind of where we're heading, where we ultimately want to go. Whereas the mission is, how do we collectively get there, right? And so when you think of mission, think of that's what you need to do in order to get to the place that is the vision. Vision would be, hey, I'm going to go to Europe. Mission is, all right, well, now I need to start budgeting. I need to take time off from work. I need to get my bags packed and book a flight and book a place to stay. That's all the mission piece to the vision component. So it's great to have a vision, and often it's a wide vision with lots of moving parts and pieces, but it's important to know the parts and pieces and what we need to do from an action perspective to get things done. So in the mission, we had it to be leaders with integrity. We must routinely look to what we've said and what we're doing. That's integrity, right? We must not view those we lead as resources, but be intentional about connecting, relating with them as a part of our ongoing success story. We realize as leaders that we can't give what we don't have. And so we must be lifelong learners who seek to grow, aspire, and share our beliefs, standards, and love for what we do through words and actions. And so that's the mission. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. Last week, or 2 weeks ago now, last call, we talked largely about boundaries. Here's a quote from Dr. Henry Cloud, who wrote a lot of material, a lot of books on boundaries in particular. Opportunities become threats when we don't have boundaries. How true that is, right? Something that could be an amazing opportunity. If we don't have boundaries around it, can be the very thing that kind of swallows us up, right? So opportunities become threats when we don't have boundaries. And just as a kind of a review of sorts of what we covered in the way of boundaries, we talked about boundaries being defining. They're really important, right? Boundaries define. They define all the way from, an example could be, your yard is your yard, it's not your neighbor's. And you'll find that out pretty quickly if you decide one day, I don't know, to build a shed on their yard. They would have an issue with that, I would think, right? Because boundaries define. Boundaries allow us to kind of know where we end and where someone else begins. Also, we see that within our roles and our responsibilities where boundaries are defined. Boundaries also create freedom. That's a big piece of boundaries, that when we don't have boundaries, people are going to run roughshod over us. We're going to extend ourselves beyond what we're capable of, and we're probably going to find ourselves in some levels of high distress. And ultimately, it's going to impact our health and our relationships, especially with those closest to us. So boundaries create freedom. When we have boundaries, when we know where we end and where other people begin, and that includes sort of how we see our time and how we frame up our days and our times and how we relate to other people, boundaries create freedom. And as I was talking with another GM about this, one of my GMs, we were talking about boundaries and when we don't have boundaries. Well, I can tell you this. One thing I always say is leadership is reproduction. It's a lot of things. It's influence, but it's also reproduction. This particular GM vocalized, well, if we don't have boundaries, how can we actually properly reproduce? We can't, because we can't give what we don't have. And so if you don't have boundaries, it actually reduces your ability to lead, to influence, and ultimately to reproduce. In a lot of ways, you lose your potency, and so you become impotent. You can't reproduce at the level you should, and what you're giving is from a place where you're being run ragged, being run roughshod, and you're not playing to your strengths because you can't. You lack the boundaries. And so boundaries is a big topic that we're going to continually come to because it's that important. And again, here, just a graph that Logan made for me in about week 1 or week 2 of doing this call. I wanted something to show that leadership is at all levels. It's true to what we talk about all the time. Leadership development happens from the highest of levels to the lowest of levels. We really need to start leadership at the self level. And if we don't have ourselves figured out, it will be next to impossible to lead properly and practically with those around us. So that's kind of a review of where we've been. Time for action, guys. 5% steps. if 83% of organizations believe that leadership development is needed at all levels, only 5% actually do anything about it. And it's intentional action that is required. So I call this our 5% steps. This keeps us in the way of doing. Talk is cheap, right? It's about action and what we can do. And so last time we talked about sphere chart. We talked about writing out steps for growth. And then we talked about choosing to coach. This is one of the opportunities you have on the call to share what you've done these last 2 weeks. Could be even something beyond these 3 steps, maybe something that's in step with talking about boundaries, or maybe it's the worksheet that I've sent out. But what is something you've done on your end as an intentional development for yourself these last 2 weeks? Feel free to share in the chat or unmute yourself. Would love to hear from you. I'm going to assume everybody has taken on some development over the last 2 weeks. Coaching opportunities. Maybe you went back to a call that you've heard before. You took something new from it. But what have you done on your end as far as action steps? See Aaron and Stephanie talking. I know some weren't on the call last time. Love to see some of your smiling faces. So if you have your cameras up, would love to see you. If not, no big deal for the call, especially if you're driving or something. Be safe, but would love to see you. All right. Anyone have anything to share for time for action? If not, it'll play right into my next slide here. But again, we do these calls for your development, for your growth. We have plenty of calls around production, and production is really important. It keeps the business moving. But this is about your development, your growth, and taking something from the call and putting it into practice. All right. Well, maybe something I say will jar you as we kind of move forward. So again, time for action. If all we do is talk theory and you allow me to talk theory and it goes in one ear and out the other and nothing happens from there, then we are in the 83%, which we of course don't want to be. We want to be in that 5% that does something with knowing that leadership development is needed at all levels. So I'm going to ask the question that I asked 2 weeks ago. How are you showing up to the call? How are you showing up to this particular call? It's an hour of your day, maybe a little bit less, but how are you showing up? Another way to frame this, are you hungry? The hope is you are hungry. Are you hungry? And I'm not talking about hungry for steak or any of the food items that we talked about, although that's fine. That's okay. But how are you showing up? Are you hungry? Are you showing up because your boss told you to? Are you showing up just in hopes that I don't call on you? Are you showing up because you want to learn, you want to grow, you want to be developed? There's a lot of ways you can go about this call. My hope is you're showing up hungry, though. You're showing up wanting to grow, wanting to be developed, because it's a rarity that a business would do what we're doing right here, right now. This content is pulled from all sorts of different places. A lot of it is original. Much of it is not original as well. But why I say that is not to pat myself on the back. I say that because it's built into your week, or bi-weekly, I build it into my time to develop it because I see that there's a need. The company sees there's a need, and ultimately I have a passion for it. And I develop it like I do because I think it's important that we do something unique for Innovative Heights and not just go watch this YouTube video, read this book. Although I will advise you, if asked, what books to read, what things to watch, what things to listen to, if that'll help develop you. But I put these things together because I want to see you develop. I want to see you grow as a leader, and hopefully you want the same. So the question is, are you hungry? How are you showing up? Hopefully you're hungry, because if you will, for just a moment, humor me, these calls have many moving parts and pieces, but I hope you see it as this is a buffet laid out for you. So if you're hungry and you're hungry for leadership development, there is a lot being offered here on this call. There's no shortage of food items, guys. It's laid out before you, and it's a good buffet. So come ready to eat. Guys, if you're hungry, there is something for you. Different cuts of meats, absolutely. Fruits and veggies, all sorts of sides, gluten-free, dairy-free, you name it. It's available for you. But come ready, come hungry. It's not a good place to be in as a leader, starving yourself out there, right? Come in, lean in, be hungry, be fed so you can feed others. Okay? This is a buffet of food. And as these conversations develop, you also have an opportunity to bring a dish to the buffet, to bring a dish to the meal. But if you're not sharing, if you're not opening your mic up when I give you an opportunity to, guys, you're not going to get as far as you could. So come hungry and get to a point where you're being fed, but you can feed others as well. When you share, something you say can move and bring about change in another person. It's that important. So please show up hungry each and every time. And so that hunger analogy will play a part in conversation as we kind of go about from here. Like I said, full buffet is laid out, guys. Smells won't feed you. The aromas won't feed you. And don't starve yourself when food is widely available for you. So to kind of move into that, guys, this is a slide. It's actually a handful of slides I showed at the GM conference. And, you know, if you remember these slides, that's great. But please don't come at it with an I know that filter because you saw this one other time. Let this hit you in a new way. These are two different ways you can kind of go about your leadership style. And ultimately, it comes down to how you relate and how you communicate with those that you lead and those that you lead alongside. We're not going to leave the hunger analogy by and large. We're going to still talk about that. We're going to frame things up with being hungry and staying hungry. But we're also going to talk about just two different styles of leadership. And I'm just going to kind of breeze through this because, again, this has been gone over before with the GMs, but it's worth being put in front of you as a manager if you've never seen this before. So transactional is what it looks like. Transactional leadership is like the individual going up to Starbucks and getting that cup of coffee for their $5. It's an exchange of goods, ultimately. It's something being transacted. And so that is transactional. Transactional leadership looks like the following, just to name a handful of things. It's being process-oriented. It's results-driven. It's cause and effect. It's an assembly line mindset that can often be seen sort of as a negative. It can be focused on end results. Purpose is functional. That's largely how transactional leadership is seen. Now, going to transformational leadership, you can see sort of the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. It's just what it is. It's transforming something to change it from the outward to the inward to the outward, changing character or condition. Transformational leadership often centers on being people-focused, product-driven, effect and effect, heart-centered, focused on end results, and purpose being foundational, okay? So these are all good things. And actually both styles are equally important. Now, we tend to favor one over the other based on just how we're wired. And I could tell you between my 5 GMs, I could tell you how each of them are wired for the most part, where they would lean, whether they would lean to be more transactional versus transformational. And so this is kind of how they're laid out right here. Again, transactional leadership versus transformational leadership. I'm going to ask a question. And again, here's your opportunity to add your voice and just kind of say what speaks to you. But look over these right now. Take stock of transactional leadership and largely what that looks like and feels like, and then transformational leadership. I'll give you just a moment to do so. So I'm going to ask the question, do you relate more to transactional or transformational leadership? Would love to hear from you. You can unmute yourself, put it in the chat. But which one do you relate more to? Transactional or transformational? There's no wrong answer here.
I honestly do a mix of them. just depends on the situation, but my heart is for transformational and leading them through that process. But just depending on the situation, it does at times become transactional, just depending on where we're at.
Awesome. I appreciate the share. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Steph just said, I mean, it's exactly how I would have answered that as well. It's, you know, I try to always focus on that transformational leadership, but there's a time and place for both. You know, sometimes the transactional is going to be one of those kind of one-offs. Hey, I need this done now. Hey, I need you to, you know, knock this out. Hey, I need you to chip away at this, versus them kind of just taking that ownership and learning how to do it themselves and kind of just going that transformational route.
Awesome. Excellent. I appreciate the share. And thank you, Stephanie and Aaron and Patrick, for also sharing in the chat. I appreciate that. I just noticed that in the chat. So thank you. You guys were sharing sort of the last couple of weeks and what you guys have been hard pressed in moving forward. And so I appreciate that. So absolutely. Anybody else for transactional or transformational? Awesome. So the good news, guys, is that we actually need to do both, and both totally work together. Really, when we're actually kind of committing ourselves to transforming people, and we come at it in such a way where we're not allowing just our heart to get away from us, but we're focusing, yes, on goals at hand. And that's part of the transforming piece to actual transformational leadership. We're giving steps of growth, steps of development, and we have an end game in mind. We're actually going to get to transactions being done, right? Transactions within the business that move things along. And so transformational leadership leans into transactional leadership when it's done in a healthy way. And transactional leadership actually feeds into transformation, because as these transactions occur, if there's proper coaching moments, if we're having proper feedback sessions, you're going to get the transformation piece. It's next to impossible for it not to, right? Iron sharpens iron. So transactions lead to transformation, transformation back to transactions. We really need to have both things going on. And so again, when we look at transactions and we look at transformation, we need both. And I want to kind of take I want to take the conversation a little bit further. And I want to just show you that in relationships, in our conversations, as we manage alongside others and we lead those that are being followed, that are following us, right? Our leaders have followers. That's what we have as leaders. We do this thing called depositing and withdrawals. This is an important piece. So deposits and withdrawals really is just one way to see how we relate to other people. Now, relationships are made up of deposits and withdrawals. Like I said, having discernment around your current balance is to your advantage. Whether attempting to drive down the road on E or withdrawing from an empty bank account, it can not only be frustrating, but put you further in debt with those you lead. Now, we can use a lot of different analogies here. Going for a run or going to the gym on an empty stomach, not necessarily a great idea. Being 10 miles out from where you're supposed to go and being on E without gas in the tank, not a great idea. Going to get a lease on a vehicle and not having the money set aside in your bank account, not a great idea. And so we can see that when we don't make proper deposits, even in our relationships, and yet we're going to withdraw from those relationships, that's just the nature of leading. We could be in a position where we're not looking all that great. It's not that favorable for us. Now, one thing I just want to say with this, it can be a fine line when we start talking about making deposits and withdrawals, and we're looking at how we lead people and the relationships that we have with them, that it can be seen as we're looking at people to be an ends to a means. That's not what it is. In no way am I saying that we should be depositing in such a way to try to withdraw from them in some sort of unethical or immoral way. The reality is we get work done through other people, right? That's managing 101, getting work done through others. And so we need that. We need other people, and we need to be able to withdraw from them because we know it's inevitably going to happen. And this can even look like making sure that we're making good on promises. That's a deposit made. There's nothing nefarious about that. That's just the nature of working with other people. It comes down to trust. It comes down to credibility and whether you have it with people or you don't. This is about ongoing deposits and withdrawals that we're going to make because we work with people each and every day. And yes, withdrawals can look like, hey, can you please work this shift because we just had a party or two added and we need your help, please, or we're trying to open up for a snow day. I know nobody wants to hear that, right? It's November, but inevitably, right, we're going to need to have bodies in place to get open for snow days. There's going to be those favors that we ask for, and that's a withdrawal. But the reality is we do this all the time, and it's just the ebb and the flow of any kind of relationship, whether it's those at home that you would call your family or those you work with. We withdraw and we deposit each and every day. So here are some practical ways, guys, to make relational deposits. And again, this is not to look at relationships as sort of just what we get out of relationships, but there is a pouring into, and that's why it's important when we talk about boundaries, that you're in a healthy place where you're functioning in a way that when people look at you on a screen, they go, that person has it together. That person has a healthy lifestyle. And I'm not talking about necessarily, oh, you go to the gym all the time, but I want to be able to look around the room and see people and go, people are ultimately operating in a healthy way. And you can just see it on their faces because you can only give what you have. Otherwise, you're spent and you're not functioning at the level that you could. And so it's important to have a way in which you can make relational deposits with those that you lead. And here are some practical ways to do it. And this is not an exhaustive list, but it's at least a dozen or so ways. So remembering names, something very simple. And again, I said at the top of the call, this is a really simple call. There's not a lot of moving parts and pieces to it. But these basic things you should do, sometimes we have to be reminded to do. Remember names, speak encouraging words. A lot of leading people is really just being a great cheerleader. Now, you're not pie in the sky, like, oh, it's just all great. It's all sunshine and rainbows when it's not. No, that's not good leadership. That's being deceptive. That may even move to a point to being a manipulator, not a leader. No, we need to be encouraging. We need to be cheerleading because at any time, guys, it can get rough out there. We know it, right? The weekends are getting busier. Speak encouraging words, but again, speak words that are rooted and grounded in reality. Be present when they speak. Actively listen. Text or call and return texts and calls. It's a really basic thing, but it goes a long way with making deposits. Fulfill commitments on time. Talked about that a little bit. Coach, give feedback. Again, these are all very practical things you can do day in, day out, shift to shift. Express gratitude often. Hey, man, thank you so much. Appreciate what you did. Hey, that's looking great out there. Party room detailing, even better than last time. Great job. Remember birthdays and celebrate successes. We do, I think, we do this in a big way with Innovative Heights. We're intentional about it. You see it as part of kind of our core ethos, our culture, remembering birthdays, celebrating successes. We want to continue to be big on that. Servant leadership, getting in the trenches, coming alongside, learning how to lead from all angles. That's from behind, that's to the side, that's from being in front. Eat, laugh, and have fun, of course, as well. Make it fun is a core value here with Sky Zone, with Innovative Heights. And yeah, let's make it fun as well. Because when you eat, laugh, and have fun, it's just as much of a building up component to how you're going to lead somebody and how you relate to them as it is to have war with them in the trenches, right? Fighting alongside them on that busy weekend when maybe you're understaffed, you're coming up against some sort of hardship within the business. So here are some practical ways to make relational deposits. Again, this is not all that complex, but sometimes we need to be reminded of some of the ways we can make these deposits day in, day out. Any questions at this point? I feel like I'm talking fast. And thank you for the share, Dan. Danny, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the share. I saw that as well. Excellent. So practical ways to make relational deposit, guys. And it's really important that we really strive to keep a positive balance. Quote here, remember to take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. The unknown man or woman who wrote this, wise words, right? Remember to take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. As I said earlier, you can't give what you don't have. Keys to keeping a positive balance. I've always thought it's important that when I look to the person above my head, especially the person above my head, not just someone that I manage alongside of or that I manage over, but be able to look to the person above my head going, I want what they have. Not necessarily their car, their house, or their spouse or anything like that, but wanting more of what they have. And if I look to that person and they're not functioning out of a place of health and wellness, not having it all together, no one's perfect, but I want to be able to look to them and say, you know, something about them strikes me as I want what they have, in the way of they're managing their life really well. And if anything you get from these calls, yes, it's how to hold people more accountable, how to delegate better, how to run the business more effectively and efficiently and financially sound. But I hope that this hits you in such a way that it impacts you on your day-to-day, how you go home, how you relate to those in your immediate spheres, both at house and at play, just in your day-to-day. So keys to keeping a positive balance in your life. Focus on making proactive deposit. That can look like the last slide, some simple things you can do, but focus on making proactive deposits. Saying, you know what? I'm going to coach some people today. I'm going to go after it. I'm going to invest in them in a way that they did not see coming. Apologize when you failed, guys. Humility is huge. You make a mistake, honestly, forgiveness can be the one thing that's cutting you off from further growth and from that person growing underneath you, because you just haven't been intentional with relating to somebody and say, hey, you know what? I made a mistake. Humility is a huge piece here, guys. Apologize when you have failed. And then be intentional about paying off relational debt. Know you have a debt. Maybe it was a break of a social contract, if you're familiar with social contracts. Social contract is just sometimes the things that are just not said about the way we relate to each other. It can be a boss to an employee relationship. Employees expect that their paycheck's going to come in at a certain time. When it doesn't arrive when it's supposed to, that might be a social contract piece. But you're supposed to make sure I get paid. Or it could be something as small as ensuring that they have a team member shirt or whatever it may be, right? There are certain components, and we expect certain things of those that we manage, don't we? That's social contract. And often if we're not keenly aware of it, it becomes something that we become keenly aware of because it blows up in our face when a relational debt's not been paid. Someone's standoffish, someone is in our life and we can't get as much from them as we thought we could. And it might be because there's actually a relational debt there that we need to pay off. And that just comes from, again, making proactive deposits. Sometimes you can't reconcile that relationship. Sometimes it's just not going to come away. It's broken for whatever reason, and we just can't turn it around. And so a word of caution, guys, watch out for this. Watch out for parasites. So when I say parasites, kind of going back to the hunger piece, there can be individuals and there can be relationships and people we work with and work for that are often more of a parasite than they are a partner. They're hindering us, they're hurting us, they're not helping us. And when I think of parasites, I think of something as gross as like parasitic worms, right? So you think the hunger piece, you could be eating all day, you could be feeding all day, but you might have a relationship in your life. And it could be, yes, manager to employee relationship, leader to follower relationship, where it's parasitic. These are people who just feed all day long. Now, I'm not talking about an individual who actually is feeding to grow and be developed. I'm talking about an unhealthy relationship where really they're not helping you. They're hindering you in your ability to move forward, to grow as a leader. Be aware of that. Some relationships can become parasitic. And as you feed, you're not actually feeding a partner in this or feeding somebody else. You're actually, it's more parasitic in nature. So it's important that we look for that. Look out for parasites. It's really common in today's world to only surround yourself with people that will further your cause. I think that can be really narcissistic. That can be really closed-minded. The reality is there's going to be times in our walks as leaders that we have people that we need to invest that much more into that may go outside of the grid of what we normally would deem acceptable. But we know we do that in the moment because we're a step ahead of them. And that's just the best thing to do. And that's totally okay. That's being human. That's something we should do. But just be mindful of there are going to be some relationships that are just destructive in nature. And those individuals, those employees, those we might manage alongside, we might just need to cut them off at the pass, right? So watch out for some of those parasitic relationships where people are feeding, but they're not feeding onto the right causes, okay? So Again, if you weren't hungry before we talked about this, maybe you're not hungry now. I just talked about parasitic worms. But it's important, guys, to stay hungry, and to feed often, because there's a buffet laid before you. The aromas won't get you fed. And in fact, it's just going to get things going. Hey, fasting's good for you for a while. It gets your body going in the right direction. It can do a lot of things for your health, does fasting. But fasting long-term leads to starvation, okay? So stay fed, keep feeding. And that moves me into my next slide, guys. Who are you feeding? Who are you feeding? At the top of the call, I got a couple of people that chatted on there, Stephanie and Patrick. I appreciate it. You kind of gave some feedback as to what you've done these last couple of weeks. A lot of things are intensely practical on this call. This call is not made up of highly complex topics. And it's for that reason that we have this call. We talk about things that are everyday practical steps we need to take as leaders. So who are you feeding? First and foremost, guys, you must feed yourself. Look for opportunities to stay fed. That's this call. That could be a podcast. That can be a book. That could be something shared in a WhatsApp chat. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I do know this call is one way in which you can be fed. So feed yourself. Look for opportunities to stay fed. Like I said, there's gluten-free, dairy-free, all sorts of different foods and drinks available on the table, the buffet that it is on this call, but you just got to feed yourself, right? Get in front of it. You also need to feed others. This looks like an intentional approach. As you get fed, you'll learn how to cook. You'll learn how to make dishes, and you'll be able to intentionally approach others and feed them as well. And then feed your peers, guys. Are you operating in a bubble? Please don't. Talk. Engage. My 5-park system that I have here in the northern region, we're at our best, I feel. And any of my GMs could speak to this, hopefully. I feel we're at our best when there's sharing going on. It's impossible for me to know everything that's going on in all 5 of my parks. I know that's a surprise. There are just some things that Patrick sees into his 5 days a week in Canton that I just don't see, especially right now. I've been in Shelby for the last month plus or so because of renovations. But when Patrick can share with a Stephanie and Stephanie can share with a Tyler, we're in a good place. So are you operating in a bubble? Hopefully not. Feed your peers. So I'm going to ask, who are you feeding? Who are you feeding? And then who will you decide to coach over the next 2 weeks? This is intentional. Who are you going to coach? Now, I know we coach people every day, all day. I'm not saying just coach 2 people and be done with it. But I'm talking about intentionally saying this person is on my mind, and this is the shift in which I'm going to coach them on said issue, whatever it may be. Well, who are you going to coach over the next 2 weeks? Who are you going to feed? So I'm going to just kind of take a poll from the room here. Do you have 2, or if you have at least 1, who is it and what are you going to coach them in? Would love to hear from you.
I have 2. And it's kind of pulls even from the last talk or the last call that we have, like in the position that I'm in, I really need to be just really focusing on my team, but focusing on my leaders. And so each week I'm choosing one of my managers, and I've got both of them behind me here, and one of my leads, and then really focusing on them so that they can further feed the team.
Absolutely.
From what they learn.
That's awesome.
So I have my new Erica and my new lead, Brendan. So those are the 2 I'm going to be feeding into this week.
Oh, she's going to pay for all of it.
It's good. It's awesome. Awesome. Very good. Anyone else?
Just going to feed my Florida team and all my area parks and help your parks where they're needed.
Awesome. Awesome. No, and you're always a huge help. I appreciate it. Absolutely. Sorry I missed a call back from you earlier. Well, we'll talk. Thank you.
So there are two people that I want to focus on in Shelby. There's two new team members. So I really want to focus on the two of our new team members to see, you know, what they've learned from their trainings, how I myself as a leader can help them improve, set goals for them. One of the things we've been doing here in Shelby is I like, especially at our upfront, our cashiers, like we have a whiteboard and we're setting like a goal for them, a daily goal for like icy sales and like pop sales and like card sales. Now, I know it's hard. You can't always hit your goal, but it's always fun when they can hit their goal. So, you know, we celebrate the successes, as you say, when hitting their goals.
Absolutely. It's a relational deposit right there. Celebrating successes, giving feedback, coaching. It's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Anyone else? Anyone have any coaching opportunities coming up and out of, like, I don't know, surveys, audits, evaluations, all the stuff that's been going on these last this last month or two?
I honestly, I'm sorry, I keep talking. I don't do well with radio silence. The one big opportunity that we have here that we're really focusing on or putting a focus on is it's constantly coming through with audits outside of everybody telling us that we're renovating, that I'm pretty sure we already know. There's that outlying thing where they're saying your people are walking around, but they don't look happy. They look like they'd rather be somewhere else. I want to turn that corner there.
Yeah, team member friendliness. That's a great one. Guest perception is the reality. And then there's the truth. And you're citing that there is truth to it. So there you go, right? Awesome. No, I appreciate it. And never apologize for sharing. Ain't no place for a nervous person if you don't like radio silence, for sure. Yeah, and I know I'm kind of coming in hard and fast and heavy here at times. That's the cheerleader in me, trying to cheer you guys on. Let's press to the finish line. Let's keep pressing on. This is a dozen calls in. Where they stop, I don't know, but leadership is an ever evolving, wide subject with lots of moving parts and pieces. And whenever you're dealing with people, it's increasingly challenging, especially in today's world, as we try to get the most out of those that work for us, but we're also trying to work for them, right? It's not just purely transactional, it is transformational. I always look back to those that I've invested in and divested of myself in over the years that I still relate to. You know, people I was a GM of back in like 2013, 2014, you know, they'll hit me up on Facebook from time to time and, hey, how's life going? You know, and they're off and they're having kids and have a family of their own now. And they were a teenager when I hired them. So it's neat to make that investment in other people, even if it's not somebody who's going to be a part of what we're doing years from now, right? It's just the right thing to do as a leader, is to continually invest in those around us and be intentional about it. So I mentioned eating routinely. Please do. Hunger is real. Stay hungry, but there's a buffet laid out. Don't starve because all you're busy doing is being a passive observer on the call, taking in the aromas. Jump in, grab something. And you may not find it's the best flavor. You might not find that you want to eat much more of whatever said item it is. Then eat something else down the road, right? But there's a buffet of items being laid out before you. And like I said, fasting's great for a bit. It can be actually very healthy for you. But over time, if you continually fast, and here's the funny thing, for those that don't know, there's actually fasting mimicking diets that look the part. It actually betrays your body and tells your body it's in a fasting state because the caloric intake is so low. But here's the crazy thing is you can have a fasting mimicking diet. Your body is fasting. It eventually starves itself, all the while you're eating food. So you can actually eat at such a level and take such nibbles of things, but you don't actually gain any ground. You don't gain any weight. And well, why do we eat? Well, we eat, yes, for all sorts of reasons, for Thanksgiving, right? For festivities, for holidays, for family outings, for moments of engaging with one another, but we ultimately eat for nutrition, to stay healthy, to grow. That's why we eat. And it's very similar here. We're eating each time we're getting on these calls so that we can be nutrient dense. And so we can build our bodies and build our leadership style up and really grow. So here's the time for action, guys, 5% steps, or we can remain in the 83% where we're just walking around with all these theories, listening to Lance talk for an hour, and we remain on empty. We're not being filled. My hope is you're gonna stay filled and full, but also stay hungry. And yes, you can be both. You can stay hungry and be full. So time for action. Commit to a routine way of being fed. Stay hungry. If you haven't heard me say that, hear it again. Stay hungry. Commit to a routine way. What does that look like? It needs to look like it does for you. Quick question here. There's a worksheet that's gone out 4 times now. I think I've done the worksheet. How is that worksheet working for you? What can I do differently with said worksheet? I'm going to try to get it out earlier than what I've been doing. I don't like dropping things in your lap on the weekend. I know it's busy, but I'm going to try to get it out to you guys a little bit earlier than that so you can actually look at it, review it, overall view it, and even interact with it. But how is the worksheet working for you? It's okay to be honest. If you say what worksheet, then I will I'll send it to you. It's a 2-pager. It's pretty straightforward, but how is the worksheet working for you? One pager, 3-pager, no pager. Be reminded, the worksheet came by way of a survey that was sent out a few months ago in which I asked what additional item would be helpful for you as a leader to engage with these calls. So that's kind of the irony of it. But the worksheet was developed for that reason, to help you as a leader, to help open this call up and give maybe some additional context. And then I was sending it out after the call. I was asked to send it out before the call so that you guys could be a little bit more intentional with it. So if there's something I can add to it or frame up a little bit differently, let me know. You know, I do put it together on top of my day job. So it does take effort, additional energy and time out of my day to do it. So please interact with it. If it's a lost cause and you don't interact with it, and it's something I can change about it, please let me know. I don't know what I don't know. But again, that's for your development. Second point, guys, list out those who report to you. And why I want you to do this is I want you to look at, are you making more deposits or withdrawals? This is like, get honest with yourself. This is the sphere chart, but it's in more of a point for point list. Maybe the sphere chart's not for you, but a bullet pointed list of those most immediate to you, right? Who reports to you? And are you making more deposits or withdrawals, right? Let's see how you're relating to them and if it's in a healthy way. I think it's an important thing you can do. A little bit more context to this in the worksheet. So if you have the worksheet in hand, or you can pull it up at some point here, look at it on there because the 5% step lays it out a little bit more thoroughly. And then last but not least, as I mentioned in the last slide or two, intentionally coach 2 team members this week. Be ready to share our next call. Come ready, guys. Bring a dish to the meal. There's a buffet, all sorts of good stuff, but bring a meal to the call, guys. Intentionally coach 2 team members and be ready to talk about it, share. There's nothing too small here, guys. A share is a share. And what is something that is common for you may not be all that common for somebody else. And who knows, something you share could actually affect somebody in a different state at a different park. That's the goal. That's the hope. So any questions, guys? Anything else to add? Awesome. Very cool, guys. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your day. Again, this is intentional development for you. So please be intentional on your end in being developed. Just some great shares, guys. Michael with Feed Me. Feed 'em pizza. Awesome. Feed 'em pizza. What kind of pizza is your favorite, Michael? Let's end on that. What kind of pizza is your favorite?
It's gonna be different for everybody else. Mine's Emo's because I love Provel cheese on my pizza.
Boom. All right. Good times.
I know nobody's about Provel. It's all about a Missouri thing. Sorry.
Okay, it's all right. It's good.
Always had
Yeah.
Provel's.
Is that okay? I've never heard it called that.
Yeah, me either.
Awesome. Erica, what's your favorite pizza?
Oh, shoot.
Shoot.
You guys gonna think I'm weird, but Hawaiian. I like
That's
pineapple.
not weird.
I don't think that's.
I always
would-
get Hawaiian pizza.
you could do it.
Pineapple does not go on pizza.
I agree, but I'm not that kind of person. So
Right.
if she likes pineapple on her pizza, she can have pineapple on her pizza.
Oh, that's good, man. And I trade out the bacon, or